Fatal error of not hitting record. There we go. Here we go. A couple more coming in. Susie. Okay. All right. Okay. So today I wanted to talk to you about the importance of remaining customer centric in these challenging times. And the talk really that I've prepared is more of a sort of freestyle chat, more about what Force24 has done and how we've adapted and some of the interesting things that we've done. We've been on a really interesting journey since the start of the COVID period. And it's just an opportunity for me to share some of the exciting things that we've done. Obviously, as a tech provider and as a tech platform, we perhaps have a little bit more access to technology than the majority of customers out there. And as a result, I've been able to lean on it and do some really exciting things. Those things have then started to power our roadmap and have started to formalize our thinking on what we should be doing moving forward as we move into the new normalcy. And I just wanted to share that with you. And the first thing is, it's not a formal chat. If anybody's got any questions that they'd like to ask, please feel free, fire it into the chat, and I'll do my best to take them on board and give it a go. So without further ado, we'll get cracking. Now, the first thing that I do want to talk about is, well, I'm very conscious of the fact that whilst I'm trying to sort of spread a positive message and about the opportunities that have come from the COVID era, I'm also mindful of the fact that there's a lot of people that are facing unemployment, have been very ill, and have potentially lost loved ones. So just understand that, temper that with my positivity, with the fact that I do get it, but at the same time, I'm not dwelling on this, and I'm trying to look for positives, and I'm trying to sort of help people win during the period. And what it reminds me of is years ago I watched a Simpsons episode, and Lisa said to Homer, she said, "Oh, do you know what? The Chinese have the same word for crisis as they do opportunity." And I have no idea what that word is, but Homer obviously said crisis-opportunity. And the point is that that's actually a very, very important thing for us to remember at this point, because that's one of the things that's helped us frame our thinking and help us understand how we navigate through this period. Yes, it is a crisis. Yes, there is a lot of bad things happening out in the world, but there is also opportunity presenting itself. And that's the thing that we want to sort of frame this with, because that's how we formalized our opinions moving forwards. The next thing that I want to show is, very quickly, I'm going to show something that I saw very probably towards late March, actually. And it's a chart that the ONS published. And I'll very quickly share this, just so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. It's a chart that the ONS, sorry, get rid of that. Chart that the ONS put out, and there are many charts that you'll see that have been published about the growth or the decline of the economy at this period. But this chart specifically referenced GDP, and GDP is probably, in my opinion, the statistic that makes it's how we feel. So as GDP goes up, we feel richer, and as GDP goes down, we feel poorer. So there are lots of stats, but this one is the one that sort of closely, in my opinion, makes us understand how we feel. And this chart actually shows that we saw a massive hit. We know that. We all know that that happened. But it actually saw the rise coming back up in Q2, in Q3, so that the impact would actually recover. And the point is here, remembering my crisis-opportunity chat a second ago, the fact that that was the opportunity that we saw, and we saw that during this period here, this significant downshift, we saw this was our opportunity to begin to prepare for this upshift. And that's the bit that we were really, really keen to focus on. Brands that weren't focusing or thinking like this would potentially be the ones that would form the statistic that say that we have actually reduced our GDP to a comfortable loss of whatever it was. I think they've now revised this chart slightly, but the same principle still applies. And the global trend was identical as well. So it was important to note that it wasn't just the UK that was expected to see this particular GDP position, but this is a global position. We know that. We know where we are. So I'm helping to sort of explain some of the things that were going through our minds that helped us understand what we were to do next. So let me just hit stop there because I don't want to be sharing that and talking to you through there all the time. And the other thing was, so armed with that information, we started to think a little bit about, we started to try and empathize with where people were at. And one of the things that I noticed in my own personal life was the fact that despite the fact that my freedom had been massively reduced, and despite the fact that I was being repressed at this time, my mind didn't stop. And the point was that, yes, okay, I'm not able to transact with a lot of businesses right now. I'm not able to book a holiday, or I'm not thinking about booking a holiday. But I tell you what, the decisions are being made now. So where marketeers are there thinking, well, there's no way people can buy from me. But the point is, actually, winning the hearts and minds is now. So the decisions are being made now. So as a family man, I'm already thinking about the holidays I'm going to take the kids on. I'm already thinking about the places we're going to go for walks. I'm already thinking about the treats that I'll buy my wife, etc., etc. And then from a B2B perspective, the same applies. So we're not in the office right now. We've not been in the office now for 11 or 12 weeks. But that actually is now, we've already started to think about how are we going to return to normalcy? What is the office going to look like? What equipment do we need? Where do we need to buy the equipment? So these decisions are being made now, even though I may not be able to transact at this exact moment in time. So marketeers that understand this, understand that the growth is going to come, are the ones that are trying to now win the hearts and minds of their prospective customers or prospects at this exact point in time. So really important that we understand that framing position. The next thing really is, I want to talk about very quickly, it's not all about marketing, it's about the operational changes. And the operational changes that we saw, we went just like everybody else in the world really, on around about the 15th of March, from a relatively normal business to position to the world being turned upside down. And I get that, you know, we're a tech business, therefore we're probably more better or sort of in the upper quartile of businesses that are prepared to transition here, because a lot of our people work from home, a lot of our people use laptops, and we were able to transition to working from home very, very quickly. So I get we're very lucky in that regard. But I want to talk to you more about the things that from an operational point of view that we did that made a big difference to us. And the first one was, just like everybody else, we lent on Zoom, we lent on technology. And we said that what we're going to do is we're going to hold a daily conference call that was going to help with our management team, that was going to help us remain connected to our customers. So our big fear was that as the world got turned upside down, that we would lose that connection that we have with our customers and with our prospects. We'd just not be able to understand what they wanted and what we needed to do to make them happy. So one of the things that we did there was we said, look, we're going to take the management team and we're going to make a daily conference call for half an hour where the management team all stand up and talk to us about the things they're doing today, and we can listen to what they're doing. We can help and we can support, but generally what we want them to do is take the ownership and talk to us. And what happened there, that was a really interesting project, because that didn't actually do what we thought it was going to do. What it did, we were doing that because we, as the board of directors, needed to know what was happening. And that, yes, it did do that, but actually the key win was the fact that it made everybody on that management team accountable. And in turn, took it upon themselves for each one of those teams to then have smaller Zoom teams with their wider team. So everybody in the company at some point in a day was having a stand-up with their line manager, which was then having a stand-up with the management team, which was then connected to the board. And that meant that from a point of view of actually listening to what our customers were saying and doing, we were connected right the way through. That was a really, really interesting shift. The next thing that also came was, we found that management decisions became really easy. Everybody was faced with the same information. So in the past, in the old world, where we worked in the office and we all spoke to one another all the time, we actually found we weren't. There were many sides to any particular argument. And what we were finding is that this person was giving this side over here, this person was giving this side over here. And then at a management level, we were clashing because we were just getting different information. Now we've unified this. Now we've said it's a 30-minute stand-up every single day. What we're finding is we get the same information. Those management clashes have disappeared. So what I absolutely hope is that as we return to normalcy, we don't forget some of these improvements that we've made in management structure to help us deliver a better service. I don't think we will, but I do think that what we'll do is we'll start to relax them. And I think we've got to maintain the focus on being really well connected and focusing on what the customer wants. So that, I think, is probably one of the most important things that we've seen from an operational point of view. We were very lucky in the fact that obviously we took the stance a few years ago that our building should be just some bricks and mortar. We moved everything into the cloud, from email through to obviously our platform, file servers, everything. It's in the cloud. So nobody needed the building. And that was just a lucky position. And I understand that not everybody was in that position from day one. But the key takeaway from this is we maintained operational efficiency by being more connected and capitalizing on that reduction in time from travel and putting it into proper communications. So that was a big transformational shift in our business and in our business performances. But now I want to flip back and I want to talk now about some of the marketing ground rules and some of the things that we did that were really exciting and really interesting. And the first thing to talk about really is I have a set of ground rules, and our marketing team, you know, are sort of being forced to live by these ground rules. And that is, the first one is the fact that I, as a marketeer, have to become energized and passionate with a dose of empathy. I need to know what gets people excited, and I need to listen to the sales team, and I need to talk to the customers. But I have to be energized and passionate. I cannot be that downtrodden marketeer, and I have to absolutely maintain standards, which is the next point. Don't stand for second best. Be more Gordon Ramsay. I've been watching loads of reruns of Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, and it is probably one of the best things. If you want to understand business and you want to, you know, there are some wonderful, wonderful speakers out there, but I honestly think Gordon Ramsay puts it beautifully in every single instance. And I've been watching these reruns, and I just think every single time I watch it, I think, he's absolutely right. What he's basically saying is, don't stand for second best. Everything must always be the best that you can deliver. Every single cover could be that food critic. And that is the point. In a world of online voices now, everything is amplified. So it's absolutely essential that, in a way of connecting to your customers, you're doing your best. And then that way you can say that, well, we did our best, just wasn't doing the right things. And the next thing, the other thing, which is a little bit more functional piece of advice, it's a ground rule I have, this is I have to squint test everything. So Gordon Ramsay says, I've got to taste everything. Well, we've got to squint test everything. And squint test is something that I've done for years. I don't know whether it's something that the wider industry does or not, but essentially what I do before anything goes out on the internet, on email or direct mail, whatever it may be, I put it on my screen, I sit on my chair, lean back, and I squint. And as I do that, that in theory somehow replicates the amount of effort that the user will put in when they receive or are exposed to that particular ad or whatever it may be. And if that message that I want to convey pops out at me on the page when I'm sat in that squinted position, nailed it. If it hasn't, put it back in the kitchen and get it back when it's right. So back to the drawing board. That's sometimes really, really difficult to do when it's me that's built the artwork, or, you know, it's a busy creative team. But this is all about process. This is all about me being clear as to what I want and what I want to achieve. And I'll come on to some of those things in just a moment, because some interesting points on there. But the final rule that I have is, as a marketeer, I make the difference. I am the glue, I am the magic, and I am the energy. That is so important. One more person joining, Andy Clark. I am the magic, I am the difference. Sorry, I am the difference, I am the glue, and I am the magic, and I am the energy. That is so important. This basically says, Force24 is a marketing-led organization. It's a business that leans on its marketing team to push out its information, and we lean on our marketing team for everything. How does finance collect money more effectively? How does the product develop more effectively? And when we have a marketing team that embodies those principles, we get solid, reliable answers. So that's something that I'm very, very passionate about. The other thing that we said right at the very beginning of this, from a marketing standpoint of view, when we were sort of initially brainstorming how we were going to react during this period, one of the things that jumped into my mind that I was kind of a little bit precious on was the fact that we must not align with the pandemic. We must align with the opportunity. So I've seen a number of businesses that have done both sides of that. So aligning with the pandemic is being woe is me and you know, talking about COVID-19, for example, on email or SMS or whatever it may be that I'm doing. I can reference it, of course, but I'm aligning with the opportunity. What's the big picture? Where's the win? And that's where we're going to go. So that was sort of the overarching umbrella into everything that we were doing. Emma Lowndes, come on in. She probably shouldn't announce everybody's name just like that. So, anyway. So anyway, with that in mind, one of the things that we then decided that we were going to do is make sure that we had liberated our marketeers to the maximum possibility. And by that, what we've said is that we wanted to disconnect every one of our marketeers from the wheels. So we did this process a while ago, but we found we'd slipped back into old habits. And what I mean by this is liberating from the wheels is the fact that we don't want any man building data segments, scheduling campaigns, sending an email, reporting on an email. No, we don't want that. What we want is we want long-term campaign strategies building, and we want that man then freed up to be more strategic, focus on reporting, focus on what the customers are saying, focus on what we can learn, and not focus on Let's face it, nobody got into marketing to sit behind a computer, managing spreadsheets, trying to build emails and sending emails. So let's try and mitigate that part. And so while we disconnect you from the wheels, we do some really, really interesting things. I'll come on to that in a moment. So everything that we at Force24 has done has been to sort of hack the principles that a marketer sort of stands behind and make their day more efficient. So where I can kill complexity, where I can simplify process, where I can kill complexity, where I can simplify process, and I can liberate the marketeer, I can expect more. I buy their hands, but I get their heads for free. So if I'm just using their hands and I'm not freeing them up to focus on the bigger strategy piece, I'm missing an opportunity there. I'm going to talk more about that because that sounds very high level. I get that, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then we decided, so the next thing was obviously, okay, liberated our marketeers. We know we're not going to align with the pandemic. We know what we're going to do. How are we going to do our marketing? How are we going to adapt our marketing? And this sort of leans on our sort of one of our principles. We must be empathetic. So obviously empathy means that I can align, I can understand how people are thinking. So what we decided we were going to do is we would lean on that empathy and we'd say, look, how are people feeling right now? And the big sort of overwhelming factor would be that people are feeling unsettled, unnerved, they need support, they need help. Okay. So how are we as a business going to do that? How are we going to deliver that support and help? So we looked at opportunities to help and support our clients and our prospects. And we built a messaging framework, which was all around efficiency and consistency and delivering support and training, all free of charge to marketeers during this period. So we built an aggressive webinar series, and we decided we were going to go and try and educate the world as to how to navigate through this period. And we built a very aggressive, it was one a day for about 3 weeks. And we had circa 800 registrants, and usually there'd be 50 or 60 people on each one of those webinars. And there was a huge amount of time went into building that, but there was no commercial outcome from it. We knew that. We knew what we were doing. We were not saying, here, sign up for this and we're going to now sell you this. We were saying, hey, you're a marketeer. You're in the club. You're one of us. So let's all share together and see what we can do. And that's the importance of being customer centric or prospect centric in that particular instance as well. And what we were doing is we were trying to build some love. In that point that I made a while ago, it's now the decisions are being made. So I don't have to ask you to buy right now. All I have to do is show you some interesting things, show you how things can improve. So we believe that the webinar approach would be a great way to do it. And we built the aggressive webinar program. But then what we noticed was, because we're being empathetic, because we're not connected to the wheels, we noticed very quickly webinars are becoming saturated. And the problem is now people aren't necessarily receiving the information on webinar. If you think about it, fundamentally a webinar, it's a wonderful marketing tool, it's great, but from a user's point of view, I'd rather listen to it in the future when I can listen to it in double speed, or I can consume just the bits that I want. Actually, it's more efficient for me to have received that information by way of a PDF, because video or audio, I've got to sit and listen to all of it, even when I don't need to. So we switched in about May, beginning of May, we said, right, okay, webinars are starting to tail off. We're going to keep going with the webinar strategy, but slowly, perhaps one a week maximum. And we're going to go back to distilling our love, our care, and our knowledge through PDFs, through delivering these guides that we wanted to, takeaways that we wanted to build. And so as we started to do that, we saw things start to kick back off again and started to see life, because people can download a guide whenever they want, read it whenever they want, skim through, pick the best bits. We're actually now about to transition back to a blend of both, where we are a guide with a webinar to support it. But then the other thing that we did was we focused heavily on optimization. And this is obviously a key term that's banded around through marketeers in marketing all the time, is optimizing campaigns, optimizing everything. But when I'm busy doing the do, and I've not been liberated yet through automation, and I'm busy building email campaigns, I'm busy building all my campaigns, I can't optimize because I'm too busy. So that liberation step was the first most important thing. And that's where automation comes in. That's where I load everything into the machine, and I let it execute for the next 3, 6, 9, 12 weeks, whatever it may be. So we then took now optimization as being the most important thing that we needed to do. And what we did was we started to analyze every single touch of our customer prospect journey. We reviewed everything, and we've understood what it is that you need to see at that point in your personal journey. And one of the things that we did was we wrote a guide a couple of months ago, which was called Motorway Marketing. I don't know if anybody's seen it or not, but motorway marketing is a lovely, really fun, and we did a webinar as well on it, fun guide or piece of information that shows how a motorway markets the services to me without even realizing they're doing it. And the simplicity of the comms, the road signs, the simplicity of the fact that actually timing, everybody on the motorway is going somewhere else with a different requirement, but yet the signs and everything all still work for everybody in there. And I find myself with my cup of coffee at the services when I'm doing 20 miles, and I think, why the hell have I could have just made one at home, or where I was going. But the fact is that we were being sold to on our journey. Anyway, going back to my point, the fact that we then had a look at every single one of those touches and said, how is that relevant and how can we improve it? And so we developed what we call the plus methodology. And the plus methodology is a methodology that we all of our comms must be persistent, uniform, linked, and supportive. And it means that if we're running a campaign sequence, we know we don't just send one email, we've got to touch you 6 times, let's say. All of those messages must follow that plus methodology to make sure they're nice and simple. So now, one of the things that we also looked at was what we call our content exposure policy. And our content exposure policy is our playbook. And our playbook is where, when we're running a campaign, let's say we've got a commercial objective, and that objective is we're going to get bums on seats for a webinar. We know what we've got to do to get bums on seats on a webinar because we've written it down. We started with a chart that quite simply said, in fact, hey, let me just save everybody their imagination, and I will just share that aspect of the screen. There it is. Share now. There we go. So this is the content exposure policy. And what the content exposure policy does is it says, okay, in the past, we recognize that it costs us money when we build content, and the business needs to get ROI on that content. And so in order to extract that ROI, this is what we've got to do. So let's pretend, let's take a high value content download as an example. Should it be gated, i.e. should I put a form in front of before you get it, like before you take this piece of wonderful content, should you give me your name and details? Yes. Should we use SMS to promote it? Not really, not for us. Should we, how many emails do we need to build? Well, 6. We know that if we're going to get value from that content, we need to touch you 6 times. How many social media posts do we need to invest in that piece of content? 18, 3 to 1 on email. Should we support this with paid advertising? Yes. Should we support this with direct mail? Nah, it's not really worth it. If I sent you a letter saying, hey, you can download this guide, you'd probably think that was a bit overkill. But then when we look at product launches, commercial events, what is it, the rules here? How do I vary that here? And what do I need to do? So this content exposure policy is absolutely critical for us to understand. Spend a quid, how do I get 5x back? And that is what that's our content exposure policy. But if you imagine now, we're now sat in a position where we've got to build 6 emails about our flipping event. How are we going to do that? Well, there's a number of things. Firstly, I'll keep the screen share on right now because this is another interesting slide that I want to share with you. We developed what was called the human argument. And the human argument, David, I'll put this into your terms and I'll invite you to the pub with an example of my human argument. So the human argument says we've got 6 things, 6 touches with you, and I'm going to break this message down into 6 different ways of addressing the same thing. I'm saying, David, would you like to come to the pub? Immediately you answer yes. Argument blown out the water. Wrong man. Okay, so I'm going to intro first. Would you like to come to the pub? Let's pretend you don't say anything. I then offer social proof. Social proof is obviously, oh, David, Stephen's coming to the pub. You know Stephen, he's a good lad. Okay, brilliant. Gain. I'm going to buy you a pint. Remember, you've not said yes at this point, so I'll buy you a pint. Fear. Oh, you remember last time we all went out and Stephen, oh, he went wild and it was, oh, you're going to miss out on that. It was so funny last time. And then logic is where we put it all together. Come on, David, let's go to the pub. I'll buy you a pint. Stephen's coming. You know what happened last time you didn't come? And then urgency. Urgency is, come on, get your coat. We're off now. And I know you can feel yourself wanting to go to the pub right at this moment in time, but resist the urge and give me another 15 minutes. And that is one of the frameworks that we developed that says, okay, for everything I'm going to do, let's put that in the context of a commercial event. I've got to now build my messaging around that commercial event. And one of the other things that we've done, I'm going to skip off this section right now. I'm going to come on to this section just for a moment. And I'm going to show one of the things that we did was we commoditized our artwork approach to mean that all my effort went into the thinking of those words. So this is a typical commoditized artwork approach where we simply take a very, very simple, similar layout and we're swapping in very, very small minor components fitting to that particular human argument. But I've got to remember that is my framework that I use to push that persistent argument across. But I'm not spending my time building emails. I'm not spending my time in building a complex artwork structure. I'm commoditizing so the marketeer is liberated to focus on what matters. Now, obviously, scale is a consideration here. And I'm talking more so from the point of the overburdened marketing department rather than the multinational with 1,000 people twiddling their thumbs. So that's important. If we can do that, we then went one step further and said, okay, how does email, for an example, work? You remember in the old days, we used to have direct mail or print ads or just paid ads, and we'd have the AIDA methodology. And we said, well, I don't think that works anymore on an email. I think that there's actually something that's a bit more sophisticated on email. So we've then said, okay, what does it look like now? Well, I'll tell you what it looks like now. It looks like AIADIA. That's what it looks like now, but with the D/trampoline. So one of the anomalies that we've noticed in our creative approaches as we've been testing is the fact that what we can do is we can drive the I down and then bounce it back up again with this trampoline. So if we build our artwork to consider how the eye is going to flow, one of the things we do is we naturally kill complexity because we're not doing things like this, multi-column approaches. We've got a single flow. And what that's essentially doing is it's giving me a message hierarchy. Without that message hierarchy, 2-column disrupts that hierarchy. Where's my eye going to go? Anybody's guess. Whereas this gives me a solid, simple down, bounce up through. If I penetrate through the desire, I come back onto a second interest and action. Obviously, you can replicate this as much as you want, as far down as you want to go. Digital assets are infinite. But why it's important, what we need to remember is that the headline, no more than 10 words. Intro paragraph, no more than 2 paragraphs. For every word I add beyond there, it devalues the value of the prior word. So we were absolutely focused on absolutely rationalizing the heck out of our messaging to make sure that when you got it, squint tested, you saw it and you could see it was me saying, hey, David, do you want to come to the pub? And there was no questions or ambiguity. It was very simple. So jump back out of that and regain my composure. So we now understood the fact that we built this human argument framework to base our messaging on. And we remembered our campaign principles, and we were saying, look, you know, one of the reasons that we as marketeers rely on campaigns is because I'm essentially lazy and it helps me put meaning to everything that I'm doing. I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every single time. So when I'm running a campaign, what I'm doing is I'm building a deeper human argument in a consistent level. If I'm not, and I'm trying to attempt that sort of thing by just sending a weekly email out, I'm going to get a really confused message. And that was one of the things that we noticed, that if you're going to do this, you've got to do it all the way. You've got to stick to your campaign principles. You've got to stick to the human argument, and you've got to stick to your core messaging. And that was really, really important for us. So there's a lot of interesting insight that we found there. But there was also a few other bits that were quite interesting. So one of the things that we've noticed is marketeers and their reliance on testing. You know, so split testing is what I believe is a myth, and we've during this period found it to be absolutely a myth. Split testing is not in my opinion, a valid form of testing my artwork unless it is done iteratively. And what iterative testing versus split test. So let's take the marketeer that wants to split test this subject line, wants to know whether that subject line is better than that subject line. Well, let me tell you, firstly, as an empathetic marketeer, if I can't tell which one's better, the audience can't either. So let's first of all remember that. So as an empathetic marketeer, it's my job to know. And you might say, well, you only know because you've split tested. Well, no, that's not true. I know because I understand, I've watched what's happened over the course of time. But iterative testing is slightly different. So split testing is where I say, okay, I'm going to send a campaign out to 50,000 people. But before I do, I'm going to split test 5,000. I'm going to send them this version, and 5,000, I'm going to send them this version. But the numbers just aren't enough, and they're not consistent, and it also drives bad marketing practice. Because what I'm doing then is I'm testing one little thing. Firstly, iterative testing is where I say, okay, I'm going to send the whole campaign with that test variant A, and then I'm going to send another one of the whole campaign with that test variant B, and then again A, and then again B, and then again A, until I've got hundreds of thousands of data points that are reaffirming this position. And what we find is when we're split testing and we're doing it ad hoc, we're testing things like, is that word better than the other? But when I'm doing it over time, iteratively like this, I'm testing a hypothesis. And a hypothesis is a much smarter way and thing for me to test. And that is, I'm not just testing a word in a subject line. I'm testing a subject line construction method. So, i.e., should a subject line start with a verb? Should it be no more than 15 words, 10 words, 5 words? Should it have an exclamation mark? Should it use emojis? These kind of things are where we say, you know, split test with 5,000, you're going to get no meaning back. So iteratively test over hundreds of thousands, and it absolutely pays dividends. And obviously, this is where tech is there to support you. And one of the facets of the Force24 platform is that, yeah, you can split test, but you can also iteratively test. So you can tag every single campaign you ever send, even retrospectively, and come up with answers as to how things have been adapting. And that, again, is one of the things that we've lent on. We went through our back book of email campaigns that we've been sending with a few of our hypotheses and said, is it better when we do this? Or is it better when we do that? We tagged up a load of campaigns where we've done that, and we got an answer without even bothering the customer base. So that's a really interesting way of considering split testing. And it's a very, very effective way because it means I don't always have to bother my customers. And the final point really that I want to make about the thing is how we've learned to report. So during this period, one of the things that we've noticed is the fact that stats are all over the place. Our belief is that the average marketeer on an average day should spend 25% of their time analyzing stats and reports. 25%. So that leaves 75% really for campaign execution and everything else. So 25%. But our view is right now, that is a wasted time, because right now, any of the stats that you're collecting, any of the data is not part of the normalcy. You're just building something that's going to be interesting in the future. What we're finding is we are literally having record-breaking days followed by absolute lows that we've never seen before. It's been record breaker the other way, record breaker. And so there is just very little consistent output from the audience right now, which is again making my job as a marketeer harder. I'm the buffer in the middle. The business doesn't change that much. The audience changes every day, and I'm in the middle trying to adapt what they say to there. But one of the ways that we have found has been extremely successful is, instead of looking at the campaign reports, the tactical campaign reports that we're outputting, such as, you know, we sent an email, what was the open rate, what was the click rate, or this ad's been online now for 2 days, what was the CPM, or what was the what was the click-through rate, whatever. We're not looking at that. We're saying, yes, okay, we're analyzing that. We're paying lip service to that, making sure we're not doing anything drastically wrong. But as empathetic, qualified marketeers, we know we're not doing stupid things. We already know that. But what we're looking at is what we call audience segment evolution reporting. I know that sounds like the geekiest term that you've ever heard in your life, but essentially what it's doing is, let me share my screen again and I will show you. So audience segment evolution reporting says, look, I don't care what campaigns we're sending to you. I really don't. That's not what's important here. Audience segment evolution reporting is saying, okay, you guys, this is what you're doing. So we're feeding campaigns into you from all sorts of different actions, and we're actually looking at how the audience is evolving. So one of the things that we're looking at is lead score. So lead scoring, if as a business you are not using lead scoring, you need now to start using lead scoring, because anybody in your marketplace that's using lead scoring against you is gonna win. They're pulling deeper into the pipe than anybody else. They're able to identify those opportunities sooner, reach out to them and pull them into their pipeline quicker. So lead scoring is imperative. But from a reporting point of view, what an audience segment evolution report on lead score is doing is it's giving me the average lead score, which is the engagement score of everybody in this data segment, and plotting it at midnight every night. And what we can see here, this blue line, it's a friendship index. So if you think about this blue line now as a friendship index, there are times when the friendship index is really, really high. And there are times when it's slumped, and there's times when it's in this medium position here. And what does that do? Well, that helps me understand the kind of messaging I can deliver at different points of the audience engagement. When an audience is extremely highly engaged, I can switch everything to commercial messaging. I can say things like, hey, you need to book a demo. You need to download our price guide. But if I said that when the audience was in its slump, that's just not going to work. I need to do things to bring the audience up. So the friendship index, the blue line here, is telling me where the audience is currently at. And if I'm neglecting to look at that and I'm looking at open rates and click rates, I'm just going to start beating email artwork up and beating subject lines up and not consider the wider context of where my audience is at. The next thing is growth of that segment. As we add more people into this segment, as we take people away from this segment, how is it transitioning? Is it getting bigger or is it reducing? And you see this blue line here. This blue line's referring to how we're growing people in this particular data segment, how we're collecting more data, and they meet the relevant criteria, which is really positive. And the green line is active for email and red active for SMS. So what this would help me understand is, am I getting subscription preference issues? When I'm sending my campaigns out, are we getting high unsubscribe rates? Are we killing the audience? Is it hurting the audience? So by keeping an eye on how these lines are staying largely parallel means that my messaging is not killing the audience. So a really, really interesting look. There is actually loads of things within this audience segment reporting that's important, but it's so important to understand that by not looking just at the campaigns, I've got to look at how the audience themselves are stacking up as a segment and understanding how it's growing, shrinking, changing, engaging. On the whole, that's what gives me my insight as to say whether I'm doing a good job. Not did I get a good open rate on that email campaign? Did I get a good click-through rate on that campaign? So, whilst we've been through some of the really interesting facts and figures on what we're doing at the moment, we're probably coming to a close, thankfully, for what we did. And just to very quickly summarize, operationally, we changed the way we worked. We connected our management team better together, which in turn connected up the individuals. We changed the way we thought about marketing. We understood the pandemic. We understood the potential opportunity that was there. We stuck to our campaign principles, and we built campaigns that delivered on the audience's needs, rather than just sending what we wanted to get more demos there before we'd send an email saying more demos. We looked at our human argument. We understood whether we were talking at the right level, at a deeper conscious level. And then we executed via automation, which meant that we spent the time analyzing and we spent the time optimizing and improving every single step of the way. So that about concludes what I'd like to talk to you about today. But if there is anybody with any questions, I'm more than happy to take them. But there was a lot of geeky stuff in there, and I'm more than happy to talk about anything in isolation with anybody separately if they would like to know more.
Adam, thanks for that. Really, very insightful. One of the questions I've got for you, if I may, is all the sort of things you have done, which have worked really, really well. Are there things that you perhaps didn't do, or things that you got wrong that you would have done differently?
Yeah, I think there were things that we did wrong that we should have done. I mean, the thing is, this is the journey, right? So these are the steps you take to realize you've done it wrong, and we ourselves were over penetrating our base in the early days of COVID. We were talking way too much. So we, in our eagerness to spread our love and our insight, we were over penetrating our base, which saw subscription rates falling, and it actually saw a negative impact on our mailing abilities, which we then noticed, we rectified, and we've now repositioned that. So there was also, during this period, a massive flex in the email market. So email has changed by the week in the last 10 years. And one of the things that is now happening is the fact that the mail servers are more sophisticated in protecting the recipients. So when I said right from the beginning, I said, don't align with the pandemic. I said, you got to align with the opportunity. One of the things that we found was you put the word COVID-19 on an email and you are getting a massive hit in delivery rates. So what we found was there was lots of words like pandemic, like COVID-19, like crisis, which, because they were being so frequently used, were now being picked up by the AI bots in Microsoft and Google and all the rest of it, which were then saying, no, not letting that through, or we'll put it into junk. So there were loads of lessons learned during this period around what we did wrong. And then we tried or attempted to rectify them, and we learned our lesson. You're just on mute, Stephen.
And as a follow-up to that, what will you maintain as and when we come out of COVID? Obviously, it's very much a gradual coming out, as it were. What will you maintain from this period in terms of the way in which you manage the business?
Well, we are so, I think we've spoken many times, Stephen, and the most important thing that we've learned is about the connection of the management team. Is about sometimes things feel like they're hard work, but they are genuinely worth it. And the big thing for me is this daily call with the management team is so much more efficient than the lip service meeting we used to do monthly. The fact that we've noticed the fact that our business requirements change by the week, and we are looking and addressing certain things at certain times. And to have the management team fully behind you on that, because we're speaking at a level that's open and honest, and we're not We're not shielding the management team from anything. You know, everything is open on the table. You know, it's been something that we've been quite reticent to do in the past because we've always wanted to try to shield our management team. And like, how crazy is that? You know, we'd have meetings before the management meetings to say what we would talk about and what we wouldn't talk about. Whereas we've blown the doors off that and we've said, no, I pay for the hands, but I get the brains for free. And having that open forum on a daily basis drives that absolute accountability. And where, you know, we've said, how are we going to transition back into normalcy? How is it going to look this time next year? And I would be so very disappointed if we had returned to doing, I don't know, 100,000 miles a month across our sales team and, missing the daily calls, and we'd gone back to monthly management meetings and, you know, this kind of thing. I'm so passionate about now keeping this connectivity there and the cohesion of the company. We were worried at the most that team cohesion would start to break apart. You know, you're not seeing anybody for weeks and weeks on end. We're going to become fragmented and we're not going to be we are more cohesive now than we have ever been. We are more connected now than we have ever been. So, and that has shown in profitability. You know, the fact that everybody in the business has got an eye on cost reduction. They've got an eye on opportunity maximization. They've got an eye on how can we improve our business together. And that's been transformational for us.
So Adam, do you think you'll keep the team remote working more? I mean, will that we still operate in that format, or will you? I mean, I'm talking to a lot of the agencies in London. I think a lot of them will reduce the size of their office, have a few hot desks, a couple of meeting rooms, but keep a lot of the team working out remotely.
Well, yeah, I do, David. And I think, to be honest with you, that is probably one of the first times that I've actually vocalized that is my opinion and that's what I would like to do. Obviously, we've got a wider team to discuss that with, but yeah, that's what I want. I would like to take that very, very, very bold step and say, that's how we're going to be. Convert our head office in Leeds, to which some of you guys have been to, and it's a functional head office. It's quite a nice building, but we could convert that into the most amazing hub with a coffee shop and with wonderful things and small number of hot desks, and all about being a meeting hub. So we're making a destination, and that sounds better. And David, you know, the big benefit to that is the fact that I can attract talent from anywhere in the world, anywhere on a time zone that's compatible. And I'm not saying, well, we've got to look within the Leeds talent pool. Leeds has got an amazing talent pool. So's Manchester, London, amazing. But why should we only be sticking to Leeds and the North and the Northeast and Northwest? Why should we? We should be looking all over the world to take the best talent to do the best job. And we learned some valuable lessons when we moved our development operations out to Romania. 3 or 4 years ago, we moved our entire, well, not our entire development team, but we moved the bulk of our platform and application development out into our Romanian office in Bucharest, where all of a sudden, we had to learn how to become effective remote workers. We had to, because we had a huge resource out there that was costing a lot of money that needed to deliver results for the business. So the implementation of things like Slack and remote working, generally, it's been, you know, it enabled us to make this transition much easier. But that has been fantastic because it's proven we can take staff from across the world and we can train them and we can deliver a consistent output from anywhere. So why should we have 60 desks sat in Leeds? You know, we were about to take our upstairs floor on, which may or may not happen now. You know, so we could fit another 80 desks in, so we could have 140 desks in our office. And, you know, you think about it, that's a monolith. That's, you know, the world has gone to distributed models. It's all about distribution across a wider platform, and we're creating a monolith. So is that the right thing for us to do? I'd love to know the answer, David, but I think I'm sort of only verbalizing this now for the first time, really, and I've sort of been thinking it in my head, but when anybody in the management team asks me, I'm like, not sure, but I actually feel that this is better.
I have to say that, you know, because most of my members are based in London, there's a lot of them thinking that way, you know, and of course the other advantage, certainly within London, is that, you know, the commuting costs are much higher in London. So, you know, as an employee,
Yeah.
I could be saving X thousand pounds a year, not having to trek into the office every day, and actually probably work more efficiently because I can walk out the shower at 8:45, be at my desk at 9 o'clock, start working.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, I think it would be a better life.
Well, David, actually, you know, one of the points that I was going to make, which I pulled out, you know, in my notes, was the fact that from a human perspective, we're all actually living our best lives. Now, yeah, again, tempering that with that, I understand that there are people in very, very dark, difficult situations right now. But from a human perspective, taking out any finances, I'm eating better food. I'm exercising more regularly. I'm spending more time with my family. I'm a more centered and relaxed individual. How would this not be the thing that every employer wants for their staff? That gets the best. Sitting on that tube on the way to the office for, you know, we've got clients in London that do 2 hours on a morning and 2 hours back again. And whilst Nick, my colleague, lived in Henley, I was once shocked the fact that it took me from 5:30 till 9 p.m. to get to his house in Henley from central London. And there are people that do that every day. And let's put that back into their effective life pot and make them more effective human beings.
No brainer.
Yeah. Okay. So Emma has put a question. Emma, are you still on the call? Yes, there you go, Emma. Hi, there you go. You're on mute. You said, have you considered an offer for sole traders, SMEs, startup scales? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. There are where they need to digitize. You know, actually, Emma, so Emma's question is essentially: has Force24 considered a startup or an SME style proposition for our product? You know, a lot of startups, SMEs, they don't know where to go. They're confused by the marketing automation industry. And actually, Emma, that's exactly what we've done. So in 2016, we made a bit of a shift to our business model, and we said that we were going to focus on the growth of our SME product, and we introduced a suite of products that are beautifully simple, and I would love to show anybody that wants around them, but they are backed up by a promise of free training and support for life on a 2-minute time zone, UK time zone SLA. And that bit was the part. So what we learned that the industry was telling us was, yeah, okay, you've got products like HubSpot out there, you've got products like ActiveCampaign out there, but nobody's using them to their full potential. They're paying 100% of their price and using 10% of the product. And all of the research out there that's been projected, Gartner and Forrester research has said MA platforms have a problem with training and support. So we took that on board and we said, look, you know, we've come from this enterprise world and we want to deliver to everybody. But the way that we're going to do that is we're going to develop really, really smart approaches to delivering free training and support at a one-to-one human level en masse. So a part of our strategy has been, how do we distill the information that you need when you need it quickly? And so obviously that's dovetailed into development roadmap. So simplifying our interfaces, making them easier, making them more powerful for everybody. It's also dovetailed into our pricing strategy. It's all about delivering a pricing strategy that an SME can afford. We have products that start from $249 a month. I get it's not the $49 that you can buy from ActiveCampaign, but again, poles apart. It's you know, we have low-end, I say low-end products that all have access to this free training and support for life. So if you're going to dedicate a marketeer's time to something, whether you're paying 250 quid or 400 quid, it's actually not that big a deal. It's the support that matters, and make sure you've got that. So if you would like to have a look at that, if you do navigate over to our website, force24.com, there is on there a little hamburger menu in the top right-hand side where we have our content lab. And in our content lab, we have loads and loads of guides where we've written, like, for example, the motorway marketing guide that I mentioned. And I would encourage anybody to go away and download that one because I love it. I think it's a really nice little bit of fun, but helps marketeers just have a second think about what they're doing. because it's all about demonstrating simplicity. When we look at motorway signs and we understand that our objective is to get people into the services, and we look at the simplicity of those messages and how powerful they are, then it really helps us rationalize and think about how we should be doing things ourselves in our marketing. So please also on there, obviously booking a demo. You know, a lot of you guys we've met before, but please feel free, book a demo. We're not a sales monsters. We're just friendly people who can show you around the platform and hopefully answer any questions that you've got. And if you like what you see, of course you can buy it. But if you don't, hopefully you've spent half an hour and got something out of it, such as a free water bottle. Hey, Sam. Okay.
Thanks,
All
Adam.
right. Okay. So if there's no more, are there any more questions, or should we knock it on the head for today?
I think Stephen will probably send an email out after this with contact details and other bits and bobs. I think Izza's on the call to make sure that Stephen does that. So clearly, if anybody wants to follow up directly with you, Adam, they can do that. Okay.
Lovely. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time, everybody. I do appreciate it.
Thanks,
All
Adam.
the best. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.